No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
What's going on, guys? Johnny Mac here, and today I'm here to tell you why I deleted all my gear. Let's get into it. As I'm sure you're all pretty well aware, back on February 11th, the developers dropped the new Primal update, which featured several very key changes to pre-existing systems. Tower of Trials 2.0, they introduced new Primal items, they introduced Ascension levels, a new vendor to trade resources for loot, and the new Dreamstone 2.0 system. And while this is all well and good and it sounds great on paper, essentially for me it created a conundrum in which the new Primal items can only be found in the tower as tower exclusives. However, they're not assigned to any particular boss or mob or any special chest, so what you end up with is a random chance to get a Primal item just the same as a legendary, but it renders any legendary that I previously had pretty well useless. Now, it's important to note that not all items in this Primal update have a Primal counterpart. In the patch notes, they did say that the only items that have Primal counterparts are the ones that have damage or stat modifiers. So if it's a legendary item and it only provides a particular type of status effect, such as Renzai the Mancatcher, that when you hit a weak point, it blinds the enemies around you, there is no Primal counterpart to that legendary polearm. While that little tidbit doesn't really explain fully why I deleted all my gear, I will get into that and I will provide the answer to you by the end of the video. But in order to provide you with a full explanation, let me first get into the details of the patch itself. So let's go over the changes that have been made to the Ascended Tower of Trials. The first thing that I would like to note is that the new maximum floor level is level 30, and the previous achievement that was available at floor 50 is now set to floor 20. The trade-off on this, however, is that the skill cap for the Ascended Tower of Trials has been largely increased, and it's much harder to progress through the floors than it was previously. Now, with that being said, I can also tell you that the loot has been absolutely ramped up, and the amount of keys that you earn per floor now has also been significantly increased. And this plays a significant factor into the whole purpose of this video, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. Now, I think my one complaint overall with the changes that have been made to the Ascended Tower of Trials is that depending on the boons that you choose or in the Banes, you can run into situations where as you're progressing up through the tower, some of the enemies, especially the bosses, become very, very tough and almost impossible to do solo, and you end up at a point where you have to back out because you can no longer progress. One of these mechanics that cause a lot of stress, especially if you have the wrong boons and Banes equipped, and I'll get into those here in just a minute, is the lifelink mechanic. With this lifelink mechanic, you have to not only reduce the HP of one mob, but whatever mob it's linked to, you also have to reduce that enemy to 0 HP within a set amount of time. Otherwise, the other mob starts to regain health. This can be an extremely frustrating mechanic if you're solo. Now, this brings us into the new Bane system. This is a pretty interesting system in which it offers some very nice dynamics to the game, and this is also a huge part of the reason why loot has been ramped up significantly. Every 3 elevator floors, you'll be presented with a chance to pick one of 3 Banes. Each Bane provides a set loot bonus of 5 to 10%, and it also provides an extra modifier to either the elevator floors or the main floors, or it offers some sort of status modifier to the enemies within those rooms. Now, I will admit, the Bane system does offer a very interesting dynamic to the Ascended Tower of Trials, especially given the stale state of the previous version of the Ascended Tower of Trials. However, this can be a bit of a trade-off. It can prove to be very, very challenging depending on the Bane that is chosen for players who might not have the same skill cap as others, as you are forced to make a choice. I feel that this might have been a slightly missed opportunity for the developers, that instead of forcing you to make a choice between a Bane, giving you the option of, hey, do I choose a Bane or do I opt out of a Bane completely so that way I can progress further through the tower's floors so the player can ultimately reach the 20th floor and and I'm sure there are still plenty of players out there that are still trying to reach that goal. Now, the next thing we're going to touch on is the upgrade boon. This was an absolutely fantastic addition, and I think it's something that really needed to be in the first version of the Ascended Tower of Trials. But what you do is that whenever you're presented with an upgrade boon door, beat the floor just the same as any other floor, but whenever you go to the podium, you're presented with the chance to be able to upgrade your previous boons to a whole different tier. Some of them you'll notice that you don't have any change at all, while others you can overpower them like crazy. I tip my hat to the development team, as this was a very, very much needed addition to the tower, and I praise them for it. The next thing I want to touch on very briefly is the Dreamstone System 2.0. I do like the changes that they've made. I felt that the changes that they did make were desperately needed, considering the fact that in the previous version, you could have modifiers that would completely break and unbalance the whole experience. You could have modifiers that would allow you to one-shot bosses, or you could also have modifiers that would pretty much make a boss invulnerable and unable to kill. So the primary change worth noting is you'll see that whenever you go to purchase a Dreamstone, you're presented with a stability gauge and lucidity. Lucidity is the currency that you now use in the Dreamstones to purchase bonuses such as the gear, the items or materials that you'll receive from completing that Dreamstone. Each time you complete a Dreamstone sequence, you'll either gain lucidity and gain stability, or you'll lose stability based off of the next boss's actions. When that Dreamstone stability bar reaches 0, you have no choice but then to fight the boss. Once you fight the boss, the Dreamstone is broken and you have to purchase another one. My only complaint about the current Dreamstone system in this update is that for players such as myself, where I'm in the end game farming phase, Dreamstones for me are pretty much worthless, because now, since I'm chasing primal gear, I can receive all these different legendaries that I would be searching for in a Dreamstone right in the tower. So it almost doesn't even really do me any good to farm Dreamstones anymore. Now, don't get me wrong, it is a good system and the system works, but it seems to be more catered towards the beginning players versus the end game players. Now, of course, for those of you who are going to say, well, what about the Ascension system? Well, the Ascension system really wasn't a primary factor in my decision to delete all my gear, but I will touch on it, and I will say it was a very nice addition to the game. It is something that is offering an extra layer of reward to those of us who are already in the end game. So for that loot chase where we're chasing those primals for hours on end, it is an extra nice little reward. And it also provides something for the entry level players to look forward to whenever they get to that stage of the game as well. So let's get on into the reasons why I decided to delete all of my gear. One of the reasons I decided to delete all of my gear is because of a particular issue that has been known ever since the launch of the game. For some, it's absolutely game breaking, in particular those that are on PS5. For those of us that are on PCs and we have strong PCs, it's not as much of an issue, but it's still a really big issue that should have been addressed a long time ago. As you can see on the screen that I'm putting up, there's a great big long list of features and things that they added to the game, and there's an even longer list of bugs that they have fixed and addressed. However, the one thing that they should have addressed and still haven't has been related to the augment tree. When you have a bunch of augments or multiple augment pages, in particular anything that's like over 10, the augment tree becomes very, very laggy, and in some cases it's almost unplayable. And now that brings me on to my final point as to why I deleted all of my gear. Inventory management has become a huge issue with this update. The update was a well-needed update, but because of when it was implemented, it's become a huge issue for me personally. Number one, because of the augment tree and the lag. Number two, you just get such an insane amount of gear that it's just easier to just delete everything and start over from scratch. Now granted, I didn't delete absolutely everything in my inventory. I still kept all my augments and all my gear for all my current builds, but anything else after that that I haven't used or really haven't even glanced at, I just completely scrapped everything in my inventory, and I'm farming straight from the bottom and doing anything else that I need to do from scratch. So to sum things up, I can say that I really do like this update. I think it was a very well needed update, and it was a definite improvement on the previous systems that they had in place. How even though it has created a little bit of a headache for myself personally, it's really not that big of a deal. It was a little bit painful trying to get all of my equipment disassembled, but in the end we got it done, and that's all that matters. So that pretty well sums it up, guys. If you are interested in the new Primal update and you haven't played yet, it is live. You can download it now, and if you're a returning player, I think you'll have a little bit of a treat. If you're a former player and you were thinking about returning but you're still not quite sure, depending on your point of view, you might not be missing that much. You might actually be okay waiting until the actual DLC comes. I don't know, it's whatever your preference is. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you get notified when I make future uploads loads of content just like this one. And if you want to follow my channel a little more closely, I'll have links to my social media accounts in the description below. For all of my current subscribers, thank you for your continued support. For anybody new, welcome aboard. As always, thanks for watching.